Almost no one really reads the fine print on rental agreements. It's one of those silent truths we all accept without question. Clara didn't read it either. Not until the third night. The building was old, tucked away among narrow alleys in the city's aging downtown. A gray structure covered in rusted panels and half-open windows, like tired eyes too weary to keep watch. When Clara first visited the apartment, she caught the warm scent of damp wood and old dust. But the place was big, cheap, and above all else, quiet. Maybe too quiet. On moving day, the agent handed her the main key, and a second, smaller one, older, worn. With a forced smile, he simply said, "This one's for the locked room. Instructions are in the contract." Clara laughed, thinking it was just some bureaucratic oddity, and forgot about it. Amid the chaos of boxes, furniture, and endless rearranging, she barely noticed the white door at the end of the hallway. No visible doorknob, just a rusted keyhole. That night, lying on the makeshift mattress on the floor, Clara heard it for the first time. A faint sound, like a whisper coming from somewhere in the apartment. She brushed it off. Old pipes, maybe, or the upstairs neighbors moving around. Old cities are full of noises. But in that apartment, the silence seemed to take shape. On the third night, flipping through the contract looking for the building manager's number, Clara's eyes caught a clause printed in smaller font, nearly hidden among the technical jargon. The white door at the end of the hallway must remain locked at all times. Attempting to open it or alter its condition is strictly prohibited. Any violations release the property owner from any liability. She read it again, trying to make sense of it. It sounded absurd, one of those urban legends you hear about spooky old places. Or maybe just a way to hide a crumbling, unsafe room. Still, a chill climbed her spine. That night, when the clock struck exactly 2:37 a.m., Clara heard it again. This time, there was no doubt, a voice. The first time she heard it clearly, she thought she was dreaming. Clara jolted awake, as if someone had called her name. The room was swallowed in heavy darkness, the dim light from the street barely slicing through the thick curtains. The silence had weight to it, a pressure that filled her ears. Then came the whisper. "Clara." The voice dragged itself across the room, almost tender, like an old memory echoing between the walls. She sat up in bed, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the hallway. Everything was still, but there was something else, a feeling, like someone was standing just out of sight watching her from the far end of the house. By morning, Clara had convinced herself it was just stress from the move. Sleep deprivation plays tricks on the mind. She'd read about that somewhere. Still, to be sure, she left her phone recording overnight, just to prove to herself there was nothing there. The recording captured hours of dead silence, but at exactly 2:37 a.m., almost to the second, something changed. Trembling, Clara rewound the audio and listened. First, the faint sound of wind scraping the windows, then a soft creak of wood, and then the voice. Not a full sentence, just fragments. "Let me out." The sound was faint, like it traveled from far away, or from behind a very thin wall. The next day, Clara questioned her neighbors. A woman from the apartment next door, dark circles under her eyes, immediately shook her head. "No one makes noise around here, dear. We all respect the night." Then, after an uncomfortable pause, she added, almost whispering, "It's best not to pay attention to certain sounds." That warning echoed in Clara's mind as later that afternoon, she ran her fingers across the cold surface of the white door. The old lock shuddered under her touch, as if something, or someone, on the other side was trying to reach back. That night, Clara dreamed. She stood before the white door, her bare feet cold against the floor, and a doorknob, one that hadn't been there before, materialized in front of her. On the other side, she could hear soft tapping sounds, like fingernails scratching against wood. She woke up drenched in sweat, tangled in the sheets like they were trying to hold her down. Her phone, tossed carelessly onto the dresser, blinked. 2:37 a.m. This time there was no recording, only the pounding of her own heart filling her ears. And yet, Clara was certain. The voice had called her name again, and this time, it had promised something. "I can help you." Determined to find a rational explanation, any explanation, Clara spent the next day in local libraries, digging through digitized archives of old newspapers. She used the building's address as her starting point. That's when the coincidences started to pile up. In 1978, a small news article mentioned a woman who had vanished under mysterious circumstances in that very building. No body was ever found. In 1989, another tenant was found dead inside his apartment. The official cause was listed as natural causes, but the article hinted at the unsettling expression frozen on his face. In 2002, anonymous complaints described disturbing noises coming from Unit 304. When the police arrived, they found the apartment locked from the inside and completely empty. The most disturbing part, in each of these reports, the description of the apartment was slightly different, as if the very layout of the unit changed depending on who lived there. And in none of them was there ever any mention of a white door at the end of the hallway. It was as if that room officially didn't exist. As the day wore on, Clara felt the presence of the door growing inside her mind. The rest of the apartment seemed to shrink around it, pulled inward like everything was being sucked into that locked space. That night, Clara couldn't resist anymore. Trembling, gripping the old key tightly, she approached the door. The metal felt hot in her hand. The lock itself seemed alive. As she pressed the key into the lock, the voice spoke again, louder now, desperate and strangely familiar. "Open for me, Clara. You promised." The key turned with a dry, final snap, and something on the other side turned with it, something that had been waiting. The key turned. The lock gave way with a muffled click, like the last breath of something that had been trapped for far too long. Clara hesitated, her hand hovering where a doorknob should have been. The hallway plunged into a suffocating darkness. The streetlight outside had been swallowed whole by the night. All she could hear was the rush of her own breathing, and something else. A soft scraping sound like fingernails dragging across wood, coming from the other side of the door. With a trembling push, she opened it. The room was small, windowless, illuminated only by the faint yellow light spilling from the hallway. The once white walls were now stained an odd color like scorched paper. In the center of the room stood a wooden chair, facing away from her, and on that chair something was breathing. Clara couldn't see it clearly. It was more a shape than a figure, a blurred, shifting outline, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her own heartbeat. A wave of nausea washed over her. She stumbled back a step. The thing on the chair moved. Then the hallway light flickered, once, twice, and went out. In the darkness, Clara heard the chair dragging itself across the floor. The sound was grotesque, wet, like flesh scraping against rotting wood. She tried to run, but the hallway seemed to stretch out endlessly before her, like the impossible geometry of a nightmare. Behind her, slow, heavy footsteps echoed. When she finally reached the front door, shaking so hard she could barely fit the key into the lock, she dared to look back. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The white door stood wide open, gaping like a hungry mouth. For a fleeting moment, Clara convinced herself it had all been in her mind, just panic, just exhaustion, until she saw her reflection in the mirror hanging above the couch. It wasn't exactly her looking back. Something inside her, or something wearing her face, was smiling. The following month, the building manager, an old, weathered man, went up personally to collect Clara's overdue rent. He knocked on the door of Unit 304. No answer. Frowning, he used his master key to unlock it. Inside, he found only silence. No clothes, no furniture, no trace that anyone had ever lived there. It was as if Clara had simply ceased to exist. Only one thing remained. Lying neatly on the bare mattress, as if carefully placed there, the small antique key to the white door. Would you dare to open that door? Tell me in the comments. I'm watching.